conversion. So firstly, what is a conversion? So that is something like, if I look at the what's called the metric scale, if I have 1 centimetre, that is equivalent to 10 millimetres. So a conversion, we might be in centimetres, we might want to convert to millimetres, something like that. And I can confirm, here I can see 1 centimetre, and those little ones there, 10 millimetres. So, instead of writing them all out, they say you should know them, but I'm pretty sure I never did actually know them, but good ones to know. So, I'm just going to start with some examples. I want to convert Okay, so firstly, convert 30 centimetres into millimetres. And the way I do this, which has always worked really well for me, and I would very much recommend, is I take centimetres and I put that, say, here, and then I take millimetres and I put it over there, and then I have this column situation here. And what I know just from my memory, or just thinking about it, visualising a ruler, is I know that in 1 centimetre, so if I have 1 centimetre, we just wrote this one down, that is equivalent to having 10 millimetres. So again, looking at a ruler, 1 centimetre is the same as 10 millimetres. So I know that if I want to convert between the two, to get to 1 to 10, I have to multiply by 10. So I can also use that information, and so if I'm going that way, 1 to millimetres, I want to multiply by 10. If I start here and I go this way, so if I start with millimetres and I want to get to centimetres, I have to do the opposite, so I have to divide by 10. So now I can see my rule. I'm going to add in the question basically. So convert 30 centimetres into millimetres. So 30 centimetres going in the centimetre column. I'm going this way, and when I look at that arrow here, I know I have to multiply by 10. So that's going to be 300 millimetres. So I just really like that column way. And I'm going to do an example with money, which will be super useful for holidays. Okay, so a money example. I have 50 euros left over from my holiday, and the conversion rate is £1 is 1.07724 euros. How many pounds would I get if I converted it back? So basically, how many pounds is 50 euros? So, before I even think about that, I'm going to create a column. Here I'm going to have pounds, and here I'm going to have euros. So if I have £1, this is what the conversion rate is telling me. £1 is 1.07724 euros. 1.07724 euros. Okay, now I'm looking at that. So what did I do to get from the pound side to the euro side? So this way, I just multiplied by this, and you always take this number here. So if I start here and I go back, I want to do the opposite, so I'm going to divide by 1.07724. So what's my question again? I have £50. I don't. I have 50 euros, so that's going to go in the euros column, and I'm going this way. So I'm going to divide that by 1.07724, and I'm going to get back £46 and 41 pence, which kind of makes sense because you get a bit. £1 is a bit less than the euros, and £46 is a bit less than 50. Let's do another example. Convert 19 litres into millilitres. So again, let's have litres here, and let's have millilitres over here. So this milli actually stands for 1,000. So therefore, when we have 1 litre, that is either from remembering, trying to like visualise, or just knowing that milli stands for 1,000. there are 1,000 millilitres. Okay, so I'm looking at those two values. So I've got 1 in that column. I always want 1. I always want to start with 1. So to go this way, to get from 1 to 1,000, I multiply by 1,000. If I start this way, if I start with millilitres and I want to go back to litres, I divide by 1,000 because I do the opposite. So what's the question asking me? Put the values in. I have 19 litres. Put that in the litres column. I want millilitres, so I'm going to multiply it by 1,000, and that is 19,000 millilitres. So it's just, I really like the column way of doing it. Now, one that's a bit different is when you do speed, because there are two things to worry about. So we'll look at that now. Okay, so in this example, we've got Bolt runs 44.72 kilometers per hour, convert it to meters per second. And I'm pretty sure I googled it, but don't hold me to it. This is the fastest time I've recorded, and they did it between like 60 and 80 meters in a 100-meter race or something. So I think this is legit data. So we'll work with it. Okay, so this has two parts, kilometers per hour, meters per second. So it has two steps. So this is why speed is a bit different. So the first step we do is we convert the kilometers bit, the first bit, to meters. We convert kilometers per hour to, and then not messing with the time, meters per hour. Okay, so we can do that in a column way again. So if I have kilometers here and meters here, 1 kilometer has 1,000 meters. So I'm just telling you that. So if you walk a kilometer, you walk 1,000 meters. To get from there to there, I've multiplied by 1,000. If I want to go backwards, I'm going to divide by 1,000. So what do I have? I start with kilometers per hour. So I have 44.72, and I'm going this way. So I'm going to multiply by 1,000. And that is going to give me 44720. Move the point 3 times. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so that is I have 44720 meters per hour. It's not what I want though. I want to now convert the hours into seconds. Okay, so second part, we're converting from meters per hour to meters per second. So if this is the trickier bit. So if I'm going to do the columns for this one, if I have hour here, so that's per hour per second, and seconds here, I know that 1 hour has how many seconds? So there's 60 seconds in a minute, and then there's 60 minutes in an hour. So there we go. So there are 3,600 seconds in an hour. So to get from here to here, I'd multiply by 3,600. And if I go back that way, I want to divide by 3,600. What do I have? I have hours, and what's my value? But this is where I want to stop and warn you that naturally we would then go like this and multiply by 3,600. However, because of, I should have used a different colour. Because it's divided by, instead of doing the multiply by 3,600, we divide, so we do the opposite. So really we have 44720 divided by. And that actually, it is a bit trickier, but it actually does make sense, because if you think if we were timesing by 3,600, we'd end up with a really large value, and you can't run faster in a meter per second than you can if you had an hour to run. So yeah, just remember if it's per, you have to divide basically. So that's also the tricky bit here. So 2 steps and this tricky bit. So the answer we should get is 12.42 meters per second. Let's look at converting area and volumes. So it's very similar to before, so if you understood the first bit, this is fine. I'm going to use the same column method. So let's say I have this here. I'm going to pretend that this is 1 meter squared. and we know that that means that's 1 metre and that's 1 metre. And a metre has 100 centimetres, that's, you could say that's 100 centimetres by 100 centimetres, or 1 metre by 1 metre. They are equal, exactly the same. So the way I do this is, if I want to go from, I'm going to give you a question, convert, just to show, 18 metres squared into centimetres squared. I do exactly the same start as I did before. I'm going to write metres over here, centimetres over there, and I know that in 1 metre there are 100 centimetres. But we're not going from metres to centimetres, we're going from metres squared to centimetres squared. So I'm going to put a squared there, and I would square this, 1 times itself. And if I do centimetres squared, I then, again, I square this number, so I times it by itself. Now 1 times by 1 is always going to be 1, so we don't actually have to worry about that. But this is then going to be 100 multiplied by 100, which is 1 with 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. And now you know the conversion, so now you can just do the same as before. To get from 1 to 10,000, I multiply by 10,000. To go the other way, I do the opposite, I divide. So what am I after? I have 18 metres squared, 18 in this one, and I want centimetres squared, so I'm going to multiply by 1,000, so I'm going that way. 10,000, and I'm going to get 18, 180,000. So let's look at an example of volume as well. So this question says convert 27 million centimetres cubed to metres cubed. So again, I'm going to start like I did initially. So I'm going to put metres here and centimetres here. And I know that in 1 metre there are 100 centimetres, so exactly like we just did. But I don't want metres to centimetres, I want cubed. So first we're going to go squared, and that means we do 1 times what by itself and 100 times by itself. This is always going to be 1. Actually, I'll leave that there for now. But we don't even want squared to squared, we want cubed. So if I do cubed, I have to multiply it again, bring up dimension, and multiply by itself again. So the answer is, now we can get rid of that because 1 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 1 is 1, and this here is going to be 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 million. So what have I done to get from 1 to 1 million? I multiply it by 1 million. If I go on and go the other way, I divide by 1 million. So what do I actually have back to the question? Now I've figured everything out. I have to start with centimetres cubed, so that goes in this column. So I've got 27 million centimetres cubed, and I want to go that way, so I'm going to divide it by 1 million, and that is going to give me an answer of 27 metres cubed. Now we're going to look at some cooking examples for nice application. Okay, so here we have a cooking example, which I quite enjoyed baking. And it's a recipe for, and then that's important, 10 flapjacks. And I've been looking at these ingredients that I was writing down, and I think they're pretty legit ingredients. I reckon it would work, but I wonder if it would actually make 10. Like, do they actually get this from the cookery book? More to the point, what's the question? So I want to make 15 flapjacks because I'm greedy. How many ingredients? So like, what's the weight? That's probably not the best way of phrasing it. Okay, so basically this again is like scaling up, changing the number. Think of it like a unit. So we've got 10 flapjacks, but we want 15. So I'm going to use the same One way you could do this is the way I definitely did when I was doing it nice and easy here, is that you have 10, if you could half the ingredients and then add them on, because you know you could do 10 flapjacks ingredients plus 5 flapjack ingredients, then you're going to have the 15 ingredients, so you could just half it and add it on. So for example, if I had 80 oats in 10 flapjacks, I would plus how many I'd need for 5, which would be half of that, 40 oats. And I know I need 120 grams of oats for 15. So that is a perfectly legit way. I definitely use that way. Another way you could do it is using the column. So if I have 10 over here, and I have 15 over here, I don't like starting with 10, I want to start with 1. So I'm going to put a 1 there, but how did I get there? I divided by 10. So 10 divided by 10 gives me 1, and I always want to start with 1, so that's why I've got 1. To do it that side, I have to do it this side. So if I divide by 10 here, I get 1.5, and there we have our conversion rate. So to get here, I multiply by 1.5, and if I wanted to go the other way, I divide by 1.5. But the way I'm going, if this was long enough, if I continued over here, I have the ingredients for 10 flapjacks, so I would have 80 over here. So to get it for 15, I would multiply by 1.5, which would give me that 120 grams that I worked out the other way. If I had 60 grams butter, I would multiply by 1.5 again, and that would give me 90 grams for the 15. 45 millilitres, multiply by 1.5. This is just another way of doing it. It wasn't, that's the answer. Oops. Spoiler! 45, and then if I have 36 grams of sugar here, I need 54 grams for 15 recipe. So yeah, that's just 2 different ways to look at it. I'm not going to go through a whole nother recipe example again, but this was also an exam question where we're just going to work out the rate in which we would multiply 30 biscuits. I've got the recipe for 30 biscuits, like the weights of the ingredients, and I want 45 biscuits. So again, what you could do is you could do the weight for 30 biscuits and then add on the ingredients you need for 15 biscuits, and the 15 would just be half of the 30. So you do, it's quite a nice easy way. That's probably what that would be the way I did. Or we can do the columns. So if we have 30 and 45 over here, but I want 1 here, so this, to get 30 to 1, I've divided by 30, so I'm going to do that on this side. And again, I end up with 1.5, and just like before, I now know that if I multiply, if I'm going that way, I want to multiply by 1.5, if I'm going that way, I want to divide by 1.5. So I'd list all the weights of the ingredients to make 30 biscuits, and I'd multiply them all by 1.5.